It was just another Thursday afternoon, and as always, you were on your way to Keiko's agency for your weekly lunch. The familiar path brought a small smile to your face. Despite his chaotic schedule and larger-than-life persona, Thursdays had become a sacred day in the whirlwind that was dating the number 2 pro hero, Hugs. You stepped into the agency lobby, greeted by the usual bustle of sidekicks and assistants zipping around with reports and requests, and everyone seemed to respect you, offering you polite nods or a small, warm smile as you passed. However, one person in particular had been standing out for all the wrong reasons. Dai, a new rookie straight out of UA. And there he was again, leaning casually against the front desk, his sharp eyes catching yours, the moment you walked in. His grin widened as he approached you, radiating a smugness that made your skin crawl. "Why in?" he said, dragging out your name like it was some kind of inside joke that only he seemed to understand. "You look absolutely stunning today. Are you sure you're not the one with the quirk? Because you're glowing." You stopped him in his tracks, blinking at him. He had always pulled this stunt. It's been weeks now. Always stopping you before you made it to Keiko's office, throwing in some cheesy line that, as if you weren't engaged to his boss. At first you thought he was just trying to be funny, like a harmless attempt to break the ice, but lately his comments have been more blatant, and his tone carried an edge that made you extremely uncomfortable. You forced a tight smile. "Thanks," you replied curtly, hoping that he would just step aside from the interaction, but he wasn't done. He straightened up, taking a step closer. "Seriously though, does Hawks even appreciate how lucky he is? If I was in his shoes, I'd never let someone like you out of my sight." That was enough. Your polite mask cracked, irritation flickering your eyes as you fixed him with a pointed look. "I think Keiko's got it covered, but thanks for your concern," he replied sharply. He just smirked, clearly not deterred. "Just saying, if he ever slips up, you know where to find me." You didn't even dignify that with a response, brushing past him and heading towards the elevator. The encounter left a sour taste in your mouth, but you shook it off, refusing to let him ruin your mood. Today was about Keiko, his warm smile, his terrible jokes, and just the way he made you feel like you were the only person in this wild, chaotic world. As you entered his office, the sight of him immediately brightened your mood. He was leaning back in a chair, feet propped up on the desk, a half-eaten sandwich in one hand and his phone in the other. The moment he saw you, his golden eyes lit up. He tossed his phone aside. "There's my favorite person," he said, with his voice was warm and teasing. He was on his feet in an instant, crossing the room to get to you. "How's my fiancé? Miss me?" He pulls you into a quick, affectionate hug. "Always," you say, the tension from your earlier encounter melting away as you leaned into his soft embrace. The two of you settled into your usual routine, sharing lunch and catching up about each other's weeks, laughing about whatever ridiculous headline had Hawks in its tabloids this time. Keiko was as charming as ever and attentive as ever, making it easy to forget about the rookie's unwelcomed comments. But as the conversation drifted, a small voice in the back of your mind nagged at you. Should you tell him about Dai? You hadn't so far, partly because you didn't want to add unnecessary stress to his already chaotic and hectic life. Keiko worked so hard to balance his duties as a hero with his personal life, and you hated the thought of burdening him with something that seemed so trivial. But was it really trivial? Dai's behavior had crossed a line, and it wasn't just fair to keep it to yourself. He must have noticed the slight furrow in your brow because he reached across the table, brushing his fingers against you. "Hey," he said softly, his gaze searching yours. "You alright? You've been kinda quiet." You hesitated, torn between wanting to protect him and knowing that, honestly, was the foundation of your relationship. Before you could even decide, there was a knock at the door. "Come in," Keiko called, his cheerful tone masking the annoyance that crossed his face. He hated interruptions during your time. The door opened and there he stepped, Dai carrying a stack of papers, his eyes flickered to you that same smoke green across his face. "Sorry to interrupt, boss," he said, though his tone didn't sound apologetic in the slightest. "Got those reports you asked for?" Keiko nodded, taking the papers from him without breaking eye contact once. "Yeah, thanks, kid. That's all?" Dai hesitated, glancing at you. "Yeah, that's it. Oh, and..." He paused, his gaze lingering on you in a way that made your skin crawl. Nice to see you again, Wan. You always brighten up the office." Keiko's eyes narrowed slightly, his smile thinning. "Alright, Dai. That'll be all." The rookie left with a jaunty wave, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. You could feel Keiko's gaze on you, sharp and questioning. "What was that all about?" he asked, his tone light but laced with genuine curiosity. You hesitated, knowing this was the moment to come clean. "He's, been doing that for a while now," you admitted, keeping your tone casual. "Nothing too major, just a little too friendly." Your fiance's expression darkened, his usual easygoing demeanor giving way for something harder, more protective. "How long's this been going on?" he asked. You shrugged, trying to downplay it. A few weeks, but it's fine, really. I didn't want to bother you with it." Keiko's jaw tightened and he leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his messy blonde hair. "Babe," he said, his voice steady but firm. "You should have told me. That's not fine. No one should be making you feel like that, especially not someone on my team." He reached across the table, placing a hand over his. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I mean, Keiko, you already have so much on your plate." Keiko squeezed your hand, his gaze softening. "You're my fiancé. Nothing's more important than you. And if that little punk's been crossing the line, I'll handle it." The determination in his voice made you smile, a warmth spreading through your chest. You knew Keiko would always have your back no matter what. Still, a part of you couldn't help but wonder what handling it looked like. Hawks was known for his charm, but you'd seen the sharp edge beneath it when someone threatened something he cared about. Something told you that boy was in for a wake-up call. Later, the apartment was quiet, except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. You were sat up, curled on the couch, a blanket draped over your lap, staring at your phone. You'd waited for Keiko to come home. He'd left the agency earlier in the evening with a calm but determined look on his face after you finally told him about Dai. Now, as the hours seemed to stretch endlessly and your mind ran in big circles, imagining every possible scenario, you trusted Keiko. There wasn't a doubt in your mind. I mean, he would handle it. The question is, how? Would he get fired if Keiko confronted him publicly, or was it going to be more of a private conversation? The unknown gnawed at you, leaving a tight knot in your chest. Finally, after what seemed like a lifetime and a half, the sound of the front door unlocking pulled you out of your thoughts. You shouted from the couch, a blanket slipping to the floor. Keiko stepped aside, his golden eyes scanning the room till they landed on you. "Heyo," he said, his voice warm and soothing, as he dropped his bag by the door and crossed the room in a few strides, his wings rustling behind him. "Sorry I'm late." Without hesitation, you wrapped your arms around his neck, pulling him into a deep, lingering kiss. His lips were soft and familiar, tasting faintly like spear gum that he always chewed on his way home. When you pulled back, your hands slid to his face, your fingers brushing against the rough stubble against his jaw. "You okay?" you asked. Your voice was barely above a whisper as your thumb traced his cheek. Keiko leaned into your touch, his eyes softening as he let out a small sigh. "Yeah, I'm good. Better now." You kissed him again gently this time before stepping back to study his expression. What happened? You asked, unable to hide the edge of nervousness in your voice. Did you talk to him? Keigo nodded, slipping off his jacket and tossing it onto the arm of the couch. I did, and don't worry, he won't be bothering you anymore. Your brows furrowed as you followed him into the kitchen, watching as he grabbed a glass of water. What did you say? You asked curiously. Keigo smirked, his usual easygoing charm returning instantly as he leaned against the counter. I just had a little chat with him. Nothing too dramatic, just made it clear that his behavior was out of line and completely unacceptable. He tried to play it off like he didn't mean anything, but I shut it down pretty quick. You crossed your arms, tilting your head, giving him a knowing look. Keigo, what did you really say? He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. Alright. Fine. I may have been a little intense, told him that if he couldn't act professionally and respect you, that he had no place in my agency. Let's just say he got the message, loud and clear. Your heart swelled at his protectiveness, but there was still a flicker of guilt gnawing at you. You didn't have to go that far, Keigo. I didn't want to cause trouble for you. He pushed up the counter, closing the distance between you and an instant. His hands cupped your face, his golden eyes looking straight into yours with a seriousness that took your breath away. Hey, listen to me, he said, his voice low but firm. You're never causing trouble by telling me how you feel. You're the most important person in my life, Lan. If someone's making you uncomfortable, it's my job to make sure they stop. It's end of story. His words washed over you, easing the tension that had been building up in your chest all evening. You nodded, leaning into his touch. Thank you, you murmured, your voice barely above a whisper. For everything. Keigo smiled, pressing a kiss to your forehead. Always. After a quiet dinner and a bit of mindless TV, to wind down, the two of you had made your way to your bed. As you settled under your covers, Keigo pulled you close, his arms wrapping securely around your waist as you rested your head against his chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat soothing you into your nerves. His wings unfolded, stretching out before curling around the two of you like a warm, feathery cocoon. The soft rustle of his feathers filled the room, and you couldn't help but smile at all the sense of safety and comfort they brought. You know, Keigo began. His voice was low and thoughtful. I never used to think I'd have this. You know, someone to come home who actually puts up with my crap. Someone who, actually... He didn't finish his sentence. He just chuckled, his fingers tracing gentle patterns on your back. You make it all worth it. Your chest tightened at his words, the mix of love and gratitude floating through you. You're not as much as a pain as you think, you teased, your voice muffled against his chest. I happen to like putting up with your crap. He laughed, the sound vibrating through his chest. Good, because you're stuck with me now. You tilted your head up to meet his gaze, your fingers brushing against the edge of his jaw. I wouldn't want it any other way. Keigo's smile softened and he leaned down to press a tender kiss to your lips. When he pulled back, his eyes were half-lidded, the golden hue dimming lightly as sleep began to creep in. You okay now? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, you said, your voice was equally soft. I'm okay. He hummed in satisfaction, his wings shifting slightly as he tucked you closer. Good. Now get some sleep, love. I'll keep you safe. His words were like a lullaby, lulling you into a peaceful drowsiness as your eyes began to close. You felt the warmth of his wings around you, the steady rise and fall of his chest beneath your head, the quiet reassurance of his presence. I love you, Keigo, you murmured, your voice barely audible. I love you too, he replied. His voice was the last thing you heard before sleep claimed you and your body entirely.